Hello. So today I'm going to be taking you through a edit with me video, and you'll probably notice that there's a bunch of things that I just test out and try and see if I like it and just see how it feels on the photo. Each photo is different and each lighting situation is different, and so it kind of just depends. You'll see here what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the S curve with some points, and I scooched down the top points and the bottom point is scooched up, and I do that for all these colors, and you're gonna notice that it starts to look a little bit crazy. Um, but as you go through each of the different colors, it starts to look a little more normal, and this is definitely not the end all be all for editing. This is kind of just getting those colors a little bit more where I like them. And then we'll go in here in a moment in the light panel and start to adjust the light a little bit, and that's going to refine it even more. So I'm just scooching down and scooching up those points to adjust the light, to adjust how light and how dark the shadows and the highlights are. And I'm going to go up to the exposure to start. Oh, I went to contrast instead, actually. So I bumped up contrast, bumped up exposure just a bit, bumped down the highlights quite a bit because I have that bright light in the background. And I'm bumping up shadows just a little bit, and I thought I wanted to move the whites down, but I decided to move them up a little bit and move down the blacks because I like a little bit of a stronger contrast. I don't like it to be too soft in the blacks. Now I'm moving down to the color panel, and I like a really cozy edit. I like it to be warm but not too orangey. So you'll see here I bumped it up and then I bumped it down, and it kind of just, I like to play around with the colors and push them pretty far and then reel them back in, because then I can see sort of what I like there. And so then I came down to the color mixer, and this is where I really go to town, especially on the orange, because that is skin tones. So I brought down the yellow and into the orange because I like a little bit more of a yellowish green and a little bit more of a orangish yellow, because I think that makes things look a little bit cozier. And you'll see I'm working on the greens in the background there in the grass. And now moving back to the skin tones. So you can see there I moved the saturation way up just to see if I would like that, and I settled on a +4. And I'm kind of trying to play around between a pinkish orange and a more of a yellowy orange, and I landed on a -1 there. Now I'm going into red, and I'm just bringing down that saturation a little bit. I'll probably end up changing that. And pinks brought down the saturation, brought down the luminance on that. And now I'm bringing it up, just testing it out, like I said, seeing what I like. And there I went back to the red. I brought it back up. I didn't like the red that desaturated because I'm trying to work on her dress in this point, but you'll see that her lips also change, and I don't want her lips to look desaturated. So I'm happy with the color, and I'm moving down to clarity. I push that up just a hair, and I bring the vignette down just a tiny bit. That'll make the corners look a little darker, and it frames her a little bit better. Then I came down to detail. I'm bumping up detail quite a bit because, again, that sort of adds that contrast, and the masking again as well. And now I'm at noise reduction. So I'm gonna zoom way in and see what the noise is kind of on her shadows. And you'll see I circle that there on her nose. And I'm just gonna move the noise reduction up a little bit. That's gonna soften up her skin tones in there. And I like that. Zoomed back out and I like it. And now I'm going to go right back up to saturation. I want it to be just a little bit more saturated. I want those oranges to be a little bit more on the yellow side as opposed to, well, yeah, I moved down to the pink. And then I want to see what that yellow saturation will do. And I want it to be a little bit down. I'm looking kind of at her hair, at that sun flare, and at the grass behind. And I'm just thinking about what I want to do next. I'm going to zoom in on her eyes, and I'm going to go into the Select Brush tool, and all of my settings are set how I normally do these catch lights in the eyes, so I'm just going to reset them back to normal so you can see what I do. Or back to 0, I should say, so you can see what I normally do. So I'm going to select a new brush, and I'm going to click on the catch lights in her eyes. You'll see there's those little reflections in her eyes from looking off to the side, and the sunlight's catching in her eyes. So I'm going to click and click on the other eye as well, where those catch lights are, and I'm adjusting the size there. And I'm going to bump exposure just a little bit. Oh, I bumped a lot. I might bring that back down, but her eyes are pretty dark, so it's okay to bump the exposure a little bit more than you normally would. And I bump up highlights, and I really bump up whites because I want those catch lights to be really bright. And I'm just showing you that's what it's all the way up, that's what it's all the way down for exposure. If you do it too much, the eyes look a little bit crazy, so I don't usually go all the way up, but with darker eyes like this, I do maybe go about halfway up. And I'm just moving those around, adjusting. I don't want the whites in her eyes to look too bright. And I'm bumping the clarity and I'm bumping the saturation because I want to be able to see the color of those eyes. And I'm showing you, or I'm trying to see for myself, what those eyes would look like if they're a little on the cool side or a little on the warm side. And while I'm in there, I'm going to select the heel brush and just heal up that little smudge in her eye. Move it around just a little bit to get rid of that just while I'm zoomed in and I noticed it. I'm going to zoom back out and just see how I feel, see if I like it. Looks pretty good, and I am going to go to save it, but then I think twice and I'm going to go back. That's the before. And I'm thinking that it's not quite where I want it. So I'm going to bump up shadows because I want her to be really bright. And I'm just going to bump up that contrast just a tiny bit. And again, I see what did it look like before? What's it look like now? And I like it, but it's not quite there. Again, I go to save it, but I'm just not 100% satisfied. So I'm scrolling back down, and I always play around in the colors a lot. I always go to save it and then change my mind, go to save it, change my mind, and make little tiny adjustments. So I'm really wanting that grass in the background not to be too overly green. So I'm making it a little warmer, bringing down the saturation, checking what it looked like before, checking what it looked like after. And I'm going to go back up and bring the highlights way down because of that really strong light in the back. But when you bring down the highlights, you have to bring back up the exposure just a tiny bit. This is not the only way to do things. A lot of photographers do things totally different. This is just the way that I do things. And again, I saw before, saw after, I like it, and that's it. She's done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you can take some of these editing tips and techniques and bring them into your own editing workflow and make some of your already beautiful photos pop and be a little bit more cozy. And if you do use some of these techniques, tag me on Instagram in them. I'm at ChelseaVK_photo. I would love to see the work that you do.